Okay, so today we're going to do proportions. First, before we can talk about a proportion, we first have to define what a ratio is. You guys have heard the word ratio multiple times, I'm sure, throughout your math career. What is a ratio?
Two numbers.
Zach?
Isn't it like a 1 out of something, a ratio?
No, not necessarily. Amaya?
Two numbers.
What about the two numbers? A ratio is made up of two numbers.
I don't know how to put this.
Represents two things. So basically, if I said boys to girls, teachers to students,
It's comparing two things.
yeah. So a ratio is a comparison of two numbers using fractions to compare them. So what we're going to write is a comparison of two numbers. Excuse my handwriting.
That's in my brother's name. His name's Horatio. Like from this series.
Right now, I like to use it. You should be seeing.
There's three different ways that we can write a ratio. We're going to write a ratio using a fraction. You do not have to put this in the red that I'm going to put real fast. But let's say that we're going to compare boys to girls. So we're going to compare boys to girls in here. So how many boys do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 boys. How many girls? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So that's how you would compare it as a fraction. 5 boys to 4 girls.
You know what?
Another way you could write it is 5 to 4. The third way you could write it is 5 to 4. We're going to write it in fraction form because you're going to have it in fraction forms in order to do proportions. Now, do you guys have that down? You don't have to write what I have in the red. Can you turn your phone on silent? Okay. So then, oh, it's already written. Sorry. So then a proportion is when two ratios are equal to each other. So proportion means those two ratios, they may not be the same fractions or the same numbers, but they're equal to each other. So like if I have 1/2 and 2/4, those are going to be proportional. They're going to be equal to one another. And I'm going to show you how we're going to solve that or figure that out in the next couple of example problems. So you need to have this part written down as well.
Oh,
Do you and Miss Latrell like talk to each other because it's like the exact same thing that we're learning.
Well, math you build upon each year. So like when you first started doing ratios, you probably just wrote ratios. And then you probably simplified ratios. And then you build upon it by doing ratios and proportions. And then you add on to it by ratio, proportions, and proportion word problems. And so you're going to use it based in geometry too. So math is kind of like a building block. You start simple and you keep building upon it. Okay, so two ratios are proportional if, so how do you know if two ratios are proportional? They're proportional if,
They're equal.
yeah, if they're equal to.
what's the word equal?
If they're equal. So if they're equal to each other. So today we're going to learn how to solve proportions, and we're also going to learn to determine how proportions are equal or not. You guys already have all the skills that you need in order to do this lesson. I'm just going to teach you the step in order to do it. You guys already know how to multiply. You guys already know how to solve 1 to 2 step equations. So you guys should pretty well be pros at this. So you have two ratios here. There's two ways that you can determine if these are proportional or not. I'm going to show you the easiest way. Okay? So Bobby said the easiest way for me, it may be easier for you guys to do it another way, but the easiest way for me to solve and see if these are proportional is just to cross multiply. So when I cross multiply, I start at my numerator and I cross and I multiply it by my bottom denominator. So what's 3 times 8?
24.
Okay. So then I'm going to come down to my bottom denominator, and I'm going to go across and multiply it by my top numerator. So what's 4 times 6? 24. Are those the same two numbers? Yes. So are these two ratios proportional?
Yes.
Yes. So we just write yes.
Y'all think I like a C name ratio or pistachio? Oh, it's pistachio.
Pistachio.
Why are we talking about that?
I'm going to show you another way to determine if these two ratios are proportional. I'm going to write it in blue. You don't have to necessarily write this out. If you don't want to, you can if you just want another way. But another way to determine if these two are proportional, you just simplify them. So 3/4 and 6/8. Can you simplify 3/4?
No.
No. Can you simplify 6/8? What are they both divisible by? Okay, what's 6 divided by 2? 8 divided by 2? Are these two the same?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's another way. You could just reduce the fractions. Okay? I think when you're dealing with larger numbers, we sometimes struggle with reducing or simplifying. So I think just cross multiplying is easier. My own personal preference. Okay, so example number 2. So write it down. Example number 2. You have 20 over 44 and 24 over 40. We want to know if these are proportional. Now, you could do it in two ways. You could write the 20 over 44 and reduce, and then do 24 over 40 and reduce. But that's going to take us a while because if we're going to sit there and reduce by 2, it'll take a minute to do. So I prefer just to cross multiply. So if I'm going to cross multiply, Tanisha, what am I going to multiply together? So I'm going to take 20 times 40, and what do you get? Okay, what's the other number I'm going to cross multiply with now? And what do you get?
56.
So are these two numbers proportional?
No.
No.
So that's the only thing we gotta do.
No. Not for today's lesson. Remember, I said we're going to learn two things. We're going to learn how to determine if the two ratios are proportional, and we're also going to learn how to solve a proportion if you're missing a number.
Really?
So once you have that down, flip it over. Flip your note sheet over. So if you're looking at the back side of your notes now, it says, in order to solve a proportion, you have to do what?
Read.
What did Bobby tell us at the very beginning? How do we solve a proportion? What do we do? Yeah.
So that's the only thing you can do, like the only thing you can do, only two things you can do to get this.
So in order to solve a proportion, you're going to cross multiply. So now we're solving a proportion. We're not determining if two ratios are proportional. We're not trying to see if those are equal. We have to find the missing number. Okay? There's my missing number. So example number 3, you need to write down 2/3 equals A over 6. These are two ratios. I do not know what my number is. So I need to cross multiply and solve. So when you do that, you're still going to follow the exact same steps. But as earlier when I said you already have the skills to solve all this, you're going to end up with a one-step equation after you cross multiply. So this is what I want to see on your paper. When you cross multiply, you're going to take 2 times 6. What's 2 times 6?
12.
You can do that in your head. You don't need to write out 2 times 6. So 2 times 6 is 12. Then you're going to cross multiply 3 times A. 3. So we're going to put equals 3A. Now, this is old school stuff. We talked about this second and third triad. We now need to solve for the variable A. When I'm solving for a variable, the first thing I need to do is what, Dylan? No. Amaya.
Line of equality.
Line of equality. And Stanisha said circle our variable. That indicates that I want to get that variable by itself. In order to get that variable by itself, I do the opposite of multiply, which Dylan said is divide. What's that word that means opposite?
God dang it.
2 words.
Hey, I said synonym.
Starts with an I, starts with an O.
Improper. No, wait. I don't know.
Inverse operation.
Yeah.
Okay? So then we have A equals, what's 12 divided by 3? 4. So my answer would be 4. So, you do not need to write what I'm writing in the red. So if I would plug that in, if I would have 2/3 equals, what do I say A equals?
4.
4 over 6. Now, I have 2 ratios, right? I want to see if they're proportional. So I'm going to cross multiply. 2 times 6 is 12. Cross multiply 3 times 4 is 12. Are those proportional?
Yeah.
Yes. So I did it correctly.
So, when you when you get to answer 4A, do you have to do that?
Do you have to check your stuff in the red? Are you asking that? No, you don't have to do this. I do want to see this, though. So when we take a quiz on this, or your homework assignment, or your openers, I'll expect to see the variable circled. I'll expect to see the line of equality. I'll expect to see your equal sign on your line and your answer box. You don't need to circle your variable up here. I just need you to circle your variable where you're solving for that equation. Okay.
That's you, Brandon.
Shh. You have to come back to it. All right, take a look at the next one. Now, I am going to make them more complicated coming up, so make sure you're with me. So now we have 20 over 24 equals C over 12. So the first thing I do is cross multiply. I'm going to take 20 times 12, which equals, anybody?
12 equals 240.
Okay. I'm going to put my equal sign. Now I'm going to take 24 times C.
24.
How many step equation is this?
2.
Look at it.
1.
1. Because you're only going to have to do one inverse operation. So I'm going to draw my line of equality. I'm going to circle my variable. How do I get that variable by itself? Divide by 24. So on my right side it cancels. I bring down my C equals. What's 240 divided by 24? 10. Good, Kijan. I was getting ready calling you. I hadn't heard from you today. You must have read my mind on that, huh? Nice job. Questions on that? I can't wait for the next examples then,
Why?
because they're my favorite.
Oh, fun.
They're long, I bet you.
We have it done.
See, oh God.
Okay, I told you I was going to make it harder.
Oh,
It's not going to be anything different. You guys already have all the tools that you need in order to solve this. So, how I like best to do this, I'm a very visual person. I'm a step-by-step type of person. I like to write things out. I don't like to take shortcuts. So, I'm going to cross multiply. When I cross multiply, am I just taking 2 times B?
2.
I'm taking 2 times everything in that bottom. So how I'm going to write it, I'm going to write 2 parentheses B plus 5. Because that means I'm going to take 2 times everything, right? So then I'm going to cross multiply my other side. So I'm going to put my equal sign. And then what's 3 times 6, or what's 3 times 6? 18.
18.
Now, you can solve this in 2 ways. We could do PEMDAS backwards and work within the PEMDAS backwards, or we could distribute. I like to distribute. I think it's easier. Who remembers how to distribute?
Oh, wait.
So I'm going to circle my variable. I'm going to draw my line.
Oh,
Does anybody remember how to distribute?
yeah.
Okay, Sanisha, can you explain? Or tell me what to do?
You be hitting the first hand.
So I'm going to take,
But you, what you doing?
2B plus 5.
Distribute.
I'm going to take the number on the outside of the parentheses and multiply it by everything on the inside of the parentheses. So I'm going to take 2 times B and get,
2B.
2B.
then I'm going to take 2 times positive 5 and get What's 2 times 5?
70.
2 times 5?
Oh, 2 times 1.
10. Because remember, the number on the outside of parentheses, I'm going to multiply it by everything on the inside. So basically, all I'm doing is taking 2 times b, then 2 times 5. All right? Then what's 3 times 6? We already did that, 18, so I'm just going to bring my 18 down. Now, how many sub-equation do I have to solve here?
1.
How many numbers do I have to get rid of on this side?
There's 2.
2 numbers, so I'm going to have to do a 2 sub-equation. So I want to get the b by itself. What number do I get rid of first?
10.
The 10. What's the opposite of plus 10?
Minus.
Subtraction.
So whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Okay. So on my left side, I bring down 2b. And then on my right side, I go ahead and evaluate. What's 18 minus 10? 8. Now how do I get the b by itself?
Take 8 divided by 2.
I'm going to divide it by 2.
And b equals 4.
So when I take 8 divided by 2, I'm going to get 4, so b equals 4. If you don't like it my way, if you don't like showing that you're going to distribute, you can write it. You don't have to write what I'm doing in the red unless you want to. You can do it all in one step. So you could go ahead and just take 2b. So you could take 2 times b, then 2 times 5. You could do it this way as well. I just feel like a lot of kids forget to then take the 2 times the second number. A lot of kids will take 2 times b and get 2b, then they'll just bring that plus 5 down. That's why I like to write that distribute step. All right, last one. What's the direction say this time?
Round to nearest thousand.
So if we're rounding to the nearest 1,000, you know we're going to end up with a decimal.
Ugh.
Okay? So we're going to follow the exact same steps. Excuse me. So we're going to cross multiply. So when I say cross multiply this time, what am I going to multiply for now? Which is?
70.
Okay. Then what?
65.
So 70 equals, what's 6 times 5?
30.
Okay. So now I'm ready to solve. Circle my variable, draw my line. How do I get the d by itself? Anybody?
D by itself, you divide by 7 on both sides.
So then d equals, so if I take 30, divide it by 7, I'm going to get a really long number. What's the long number that I'm going to get?
4.285714.
7, 1, 4, 2. So my directions say round to the nearest 1,000th. What number is in my 1,000th place value? No. 5. So I'm going to underline it. Look to the right. Is that number next to it 5 or greater?
Yes.
So what happens to that 5?
Turns into 6.
So my answer is actually going to be
4.
D equals, sorry, Dylan, go ahead.
4.29.
No. What? 2, 8, 6. Because you want to make sure you have a number all the way up to the 1,000th spot. And that's it. Any questions?
No.